So, Mike, we were just talking about the hurricanes that hit Florida recently. Was September was the first one?
September 26th was the first one.
Man.
And then 13 days later was the second one. And the first one was pretty massive. And, for those who don't know, we had the ocean come in to our first floor of our house and take everything with it. So it was an interesting experience. But, I've learned a lot through it. And I think it's going to ultimately, in the long run, be I shouldn't say it's going to be a good thing, but we'll make good out of it.
Right.
It's been a very devastating thing. There's 4 houses on my street that are coming down right now, and people who, have no place to live and stuff like that. But it's been interesting. I've had a number of big revelations, though, and I had one very recently as it pertained to streaming, both with music and video. And that came about because I had lost my entire CD collection, and along with that, our entire DVD collection. And so it was actually pretty sad to have to throw all that stuff out and put it into a landfill.
Sure.
Lots of years of collecting, right? But then it occurred to me just a couple weeks ago when going through that final process, the CDs and the DVDs have been in storage. I say storage just because they've been in bins and a cabinet and whatnot for a long time. Not accessed because we don't need to. If we decide we want to watch a movie, we open up our Fire Stick and we go to the search and we search for it. And we're subscribed to multiple services, and it's always going to be available on something. Whatever movie we're looking for is always available on one of the services.
Right.
And the same thing with music. If I want to listen to an obscure artist whose record I have, I usually didn't go digging through my CD collection to go grab it. I get in my car and I pull out my phone and I find it. And the same thing even with the other rooms in the house that are all wired for sound. If I'm sitting out on the back deck, I'll just call it up on the phone and it sends it to the speakers.
The on demand.
Being a musician who pursued the music industry path for a long time, we felt firsthand the result of streaming, right?
Right.
And what streaming did to the music industry and how it kind of dismantled the music industry.
Decimated it.
Completely, right? So there's a part of me that has a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to streaming. And at the same point with a lot of the musicians that we deal with in our space, they've put such an emphasis on finishing their record. And now they're, so excited to get their songs out. But then what's going to happen to their songs or their record? Well, they're putting it out on these streaming sites, and they're lucky if they earn a couple dollars from it. And that's the complaint we hear all the time from people who come into our space about licensing is like, I don't make any money. Oh, of course not. The streaming services are laid out in a way that so that you don't make money.
You. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's right.
And so I've had a bit of a chip on my shoulder for a long time with these services until this experience. And this is when I realized, because now for the first time it hit me as a consumer and not as a creator. And that's been the big difference. Even you and I producing a film recently, looking at it because we're still on the creative side. But then looking at it now from the consumer's perspective, as a consumer, streaming services are so convenient. They allow us to declutter our lives. They allow us to get rid of all the stuff that just takes up space. And it literally is on demand. When you're driving down the street and you want to listen to a particular song by a particular artist, you don't have to have that CD in your car. You can just call it up. And that to me was that big revelation of, I get it now. Because I get it from the consumer's perspective. And oftentimes as creators, let's face it, we want consumers to see it from our perspective. Right. Now, the beauty of the world that we live in is I've been out of the traditional music industry for over 15 years. But I still have that chip on my shoulder of what it did to the industry starting in the early 2000s up until when I got out and focused on licensing, as you have as well.
Yeah.
Streaming services are here to stay. Consumers are not going to want them to go away because of the convenience they provide. So then, from a creative perspective, how do we leverage them to our advantage?
Well, this is why we teach not to be precious about your songs. when you're licensing them to projects, you're putting them in essentially backgrounds of scenes for the consumers to experience the scene. They're not tuning into that show to listen to your song.
No.
So it's that same pivot.
Correct.
Yeah.
And even more so, as musicians pursuing that, I call it the traditional music path, we are following a business to customer relationship.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
We are the business. We are the business that's creating the product, trying to get it out to a consumer. It's like a one-to-many approach.
Yeah.
How do I take this one thing that I've created and how do I market it to all these consumers? How do I get it to all these people? And pray to God that 10% of them take action on it and listen to it. I mean, if you just think for a second, across all the streaming sites, it's an average of 250 streams to earn $1. How many people do you have to market your music to get those 250 streams? That's a massive amount of work.
100,000 songs get uploaded a day.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have fierce competition and you got to market your songs to all these people and hope that enough of them take action. And ultimately, that whole process takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money, and the revenue and the results for 99% of the people out there doing it and trying it, it's not worth it. You're also competing against the major record labels and publishers who have the entire marketing machine behind them. But that's the business to customer pursuit.
Yeah,
that's
the
we're
traditional
also
music
used to.
business. Yeah.
Right. Now, the flip side is how do we leverage this to our advantage? Well, we leverage it to our advantage when we do a business-to-business relationship. As a business creating the piece of content or the asset or the song, whatever you want to call it, how do we actually bring in real money? Well, we bring in real money when instead of going to the customer where there's that fierce competition, we go to the businesses. And the businesses already have that infrastructure behind them to get their
Say that one more
out.
time. Say that last part one more time.
The businesses that we're working with, they already have the full infrastructure behind them, the marketing infrastructure and whatnot behind them to get their asset out into the marketplace. Those businesses, which are large production companies, they've leveraged streaming. That's how they exist, right? So we're no longer fighting against the man.
That's right.
Now we're actually working with the man, so to speak, to get our music out. And this is through the licensing process, right? It's by marrying our music to other products that are created by major production companies that are then, sent out to the masses with massive marketing through trailers and getting it out to Netflix and Peacock and Hulu and Disney Plus and all that. So it is getting the eyes and ears of customers. And then, of course, if customers really like the song that they're hearing on a show, what do? They pull out their phone and they Shazam it.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. So that was a huge revelation to me in looking at it from the customer's perspective. And this is one of those things where when you are actually making the rules of the game work in your favor, instead of fighting it, which I feel like I have been fighting it, But in a sense, I fought it back in the day, but now it's like I fought it to the point where I was like, the traditional music industry sucks. I'm no longer bothering with this path. And at the same point, I was getting older in the traditional music industry. This is no longer really relevant to my life, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But that to me was that big revelation of really seeing it clearly from the customer's perspective. And I had not had that experience prior to this.
Sure. Yeah. This is why a lot of musicians come into our world with a defeated attitude. They're defeated. They have so many doubts from the start. It's because of that experience being in the traditional music business that's given them this mentality.
Yeah.
Well,
it's you are literally pushing a boulder uphill.
Right.
And the reality is as an independent musician in the traditional music industry, on that side of the business, you are fighting against all of those major publishing companies and those major artists and those major record labels, right?
Right. Whereas with Sync, it's what, 46% is indie artists, right?
46% is
Almost
indie
half of the
artists.
market share is unknown indie artists in sync, whereas the traditional music industry, I don't even know the percentage. It's got to be very, very tiny. Like what I would imagine 1%.
If that.
So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
no-brainer if you think about it
Yeah,
logically.
it's fascinating because it literally is 46% for the independents on the sync side and 7% for the majors.
That's right. And the other percentage is the composers, right? Who are hired
Composers,
on the
yeah.
jobs. Yeah.
And when you look at those percentages, that's 47% that has composers, right? Composed music. That's half of, that's basically, 46, 47%, right? Independent musicians are the 46%, composers are the 47%. It's split right down the middle, with the additional remaining 7% being the major artists. I mean, there is no clearer route to having success and really bringing in legitimate income.
That's just it. And for musicians who are passionate about touring and performing, you don't have to stop that. You can create income as a foundation for your business with Sync and still tour and enjoy doing what you do without the pressure of having to have that part of your world be the sole source of income for your business. You can use Sync and getting songs licensed into projects as the sole source of income to build the foundation for your business that you can then do the other stuff that you enjoy doing on top.
Yeah, I worked as a guitar player and played with a lot of artists for many years. And what was always fascinating was when I would play a show with an artist, sometimes, you just show up your background music. You show up at a club, even if you're playing at Bob's Bar and Grill on a Friday night, you're just background music. People showed up and like, who's the band tonight? Oh, it's,
True.
Jane Doe. But when Jane Doe is up on stage and plays a couple songs and then stops and says, this next song that I'm going to play for you is called Beautiful Day, and it was used in TV show X, and we also had it used in TV show Y or film A, people stop and pay attention. And so that's the other element where if you are pursuing that path, that you'd be shocked at how far that goes during a live performance.
Yeah. You said you had a few revelations from this experience. So one of them was this just appreciating music as a consumer instead of, I guess, having an aversion to it as a creator because of what that whole experience with streaming decimating the music industry. What are some of your other revelations out of this experience?
Well, the other revelations, I've had people say when I talk about it or whenever, we've been on a lot of calls and people say like, man, you have a great attitude. I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day who did not know about this. And he called and we were talking. I was like, man, we're still digging out. And he's like, oh, from what? And I'm like, oh yeah, we had the ocean in our house a couple of weeks ago. As we were continuing on the conversation, he just kept coming back. He's like, I am still speechless about this, but you have just a great attitude about it. And I thought, well, initially you were there. I was hanging out with you when it first happened.
Yeah.
I'm watching on my phone what's going on, right? It's a sickening feeling. And I knew
From
we were
across the
losing so
country.
much. Yeah, from across the country. And I knew we were losing so much. And, I knew that my studio was done, gear was gone. I knew cars were gone. I mean, it was a shocking experience, right? But by the next night when I'd gotten home and we had started digging out and, our neighbor directly across the street doesn't have a house anymore. And our neighbor 4 houses down doesn't have a house anymore. A neighbor like 3 houses down on the other side of the street doesn't have a house anymore. There's 11 houses on this particular street. 4 of them are gone. There's probably close to 70 or 80 houses in this neighborhood that are gone. But the fact that we could sleep in our own bed, and go to the bathroom that actually has walls.
Yeah. Right.
Like those were moments of like going, wow, man, everything you work for can go away very quickly. And then 13 days later, when we left and Milton was coming through, Milton was on a path directly to us. And my wife and I left around 3:30 in the morning. Everyone had evacuated. We were leaving around 3:30 in the morning. And we both stood outside and we looked at the house and we just thought, man, if we come back, if this house is still standing in 2 days, we're going to be so fortunate. And it was, looking at a lot of the stuff that I lost, it occurred to me, again, after the initial shock, was that a lot of those things were things that I'd held on to for a long time. Stuff that I just kept in storage. I don't really care about the cabinets. I don't care about, the shower that had to be ripped out and put in a new shower. That I have no sentimental value to tile. But a lot of the stuff that I had since I was a kid or a teenager and throughout my career had to be thrown away, and awards and stuff like that just completely ruined. And after it was gone, after the truck had come and removed everything, there was like a refreshing feeling of, okay, now we get to start from scratch. Now we're rebuilding from scratch without having all the other stuff. And there was a bit of a cleansing feeling in a weird way of getting rid of the stuff that we had. It was getting rid of all the old and going, okay, so what's next? Do I need to get that stuff again? No. Like, what else is next? What's next on the path? And just kind of gave a lot of clarity on what's important. And I feel like a lot of times we hold on to things.
Yeah, for sure. Who has a memory box in their garage that's watching this? Let us know in the comments. I definitely have a few, which I never open. I was thinking about this recently, Mike. When we're young and we have this like unknown future, and it's very scary, but it's also very exciting. And we get older and we say, man, if I knew then what I know now. Well, we're all actually in this situation that you do know now what you know now, and your future is still unknown. So this revelation that you get to build from scratch, it was always there. This just brought it to light for you. And it's, for all of us, our future doesn't have to be set. Our future can be whatever you make of it. And that's I think, a really, really powerful takeaway that you got from this. And
it's a big reset.
Message.
Yeah, it's a big reset. And that was the other thing too, is like it's a huge reset, especially as we acquire gear, like recording gear, for example. We acquire gear over the years. We get our preamps and our microphones and all the guitars and whatever.
Right.
That kind of becomes our palette because that's what we've acquired. Not that you get stuck. I don't feel like I was ever stuck, but you get caught up in, this is just my process. This is the stuff. This is my sound. This is my XYZ. But when it goes away, it's like kind of like turning the page and going, I can completely rewrite the script from scratch.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Powerful.
I'm excited about what the future's bringing, and sucks to go through, but I'm excited about what's coming.
Yeah. Well, you have a great attitude about it, for sure. Yeah. I'm sorry you guys had to go through that. Sorry for anybody who has to go through something like that. That's like a 1,000-year storm from whatever I've been hearing.
Yeah.
It's not something that's very common. Of course, there were one after the next was crazy. That's just,
it was interesting, but there's nothing you can do but laugh about it.
Yeah.
And like I said, we are very blessed, and I'm excited about the rebuild, and I'm excited about what's coming up in our lives as a result of it, the opportunities that we are going to create from it. If you're interested in getting your songs into your favorite films, TV shows, commercials, trailers, and video games, you're going to want to check out the free guide below.